Hey there, Fnu here. Listen, I have a question for you. Are you looking for a fantastic JRPG on the PS2 with an incredible leveling system, beautiful characters, an episodic storyline, and one of the most beautiful orchestrated soundtracks you've ever heard? Well, that's oddly specific, but man, does Dragon Quest VIII have you covered! You know, I think even by the mid-era of the PS2, I was starting to get a little jaded out on JRPGs, at least the more traditional ones. Like, I could tell the interesting ones from the bad ones. I had started with a lot of the really interesting ones, as we've already discussed. And Dragon Quest VIII was kind of refreshing in that sense. Like, usually you level up and you maybe unlock an ability, you get some stat boosts, and to be fair, that kind of still happens in this game. Occasionally you will unlock something new as you go, but most of your actual character development, which shapes your role in combat, what weapon you'll be using, what abilities you'll have, is up to you. You get these ability points every time you level up. These, you can pump them into one of the several weapon categories or a passive category that every character has. So depending on what you want to chase right now, maybe you have a different idea like, I'll have this character use this weapon instead, or, oh, I played around with this character, but I really want them to have this other piece of equipment instead. Maybe I'll have this character do it. And it feels so much more rewarding because of that, because you are directly, the game isn't deciding for you how your abilities are unlocked. You decide when to put what abilities where. I wish it told you things like how many points you needed towards a new skill, but hey, at least you know you'll have unlocked everything if you get at least one of them up to 100. I mentioned before that Wild Arms 3 has the absolute best bosses in any turn-based RPG, but don't get me wrong, Dragon Quest VIII comes really freaking close. It tries its absolute hardest, and eventually, yes, high-level play will look like you're putting buffs on everybody, you're making sure that enemies die as quickly as possible, you're psyching yourself up. That's another fantastic mechanic, by the way, the psych up. Like, getting your characters pumped, specifically spending turns in order to give yourself more power. It actually, or I was about to say it reminds me a lot of Bravely Default, but if we're going chronologically, Bravely Default would remind me a lot of Dragon Quest VIII. I guess would be more appropriate. But the other thing, none of that gameplay really matters if there's not a reason to make you want to go through the world, and that feels strange coming from me. It feels weird to say that considering how much I evangelize gameplay. To me, JRPGs hold a special place because I kind of know what I'm getting into. I go into them expecting that maybe I'm going to have to slow down and smell the roses and absorb everything that's happening around me first, and there is a lot to take in this world. Every single region you go to, every single place you visit has its own self-contained story. Well, I say self-contained, chances are the events that are taking place there are a direct result of the big bad, of the big thing that's affecting the world, but it almost feels like, especially because of the art style, Akira Toriyama, I think his name is, same guy who did Dragon Ball, designed these characters. Because of the cell shading, his designs, how wacky and colorful and just over the top everybody is to begin with, and the fact that every single one of these regions has its own problems, its own ecosystem, its own obstacles that it needs to overcome, it feels like you're watching episodes of a cartoon. It's kind of nostalgic for me in that sense. It reminds me of watching Toonami or something like that. Just sitting down in front of my TV in the afternoon after school and just seeing what happens next, following characters that I already enjoy, except this time I get to dictate the action. I have a direct influence over where they go and what they do, and, you know, there's nothing inherently wrong with cartoons, with traditional media like music and shows and whatnot, but I really do think, thanks to games like Dragon Quest VIII, that video games are the most superior art form out there. I just enjoy them more in general on a base level than other things, because you can do stuff like that. They can give you those kinds of experiences. And dude, that orchestrated soundtrack, those are some good strings. That's some good everything. There's just an effect an orchestra has on you mentally. I think it was the producer for Super Mario Galaxy who says he almost didn't include orchestrated music because he felt like it would distract from the game or something. No. It actually has the exact opposite effect. It makes you more immersed because orchestras, particularly, they have this sense of scope, this sense of size. In the case of Super Mario Galaxy, that was great because of you were exploring an entire universe, and here you've got the big wide world open to you. You've got this place that feels like a place because it has that ambience, that feel to it that only that kind of music can give. It's practically tradition at this point. There isn't a Dragon Quest game that's been released since 8 that hasn't featured this kind of thing, aside from remakes, and even some of those too. I'm just hopeless, aren't I? I keep mentally coming back to the characters in all of these videos. I've slowly come to the realization that this means so much to me. I can't help it. I'm a writer by trade. I love seeing people who feel like people, even if I know in the back of my head they're fictional. I love stories that still get me to empathize with something that isn't actually there, that's clever enough to pull off that kind of trick. And man, how can you not love the characters in this game? Yangus. Freaking Yangus, who almost became a meme in his own right. Oh, blimey! Just that accent, that look, the fact that he's actually a really useful character does a lot of your damage, right up until you start getting certain abilities, but spoilers. There's the ever-cocky Angelo, who claims to know exactly what he's doing, but you can tell he's kind of flying by the seat of his pants just as much as everybody else is. Your hero character who, while they are a blank slate, there's a good way and a bad way to go about that. It's in the name. He's a hero. He's willing to do what needs to be done, and that doesn't mean he doesn't have a place in this world. He has a story. He was somebody before this. He has, especially if you get into the post-game content, he has a history. He has a place. He has many different things that you can uncover as you go on. There are mysteries to solve. And it's a blast to figure out what they are as you go. And it all wraps up at the end. That end, all of them, honestly, even the new one they introduced in the 3DS remake, which, yes, you can actually play this game on 3DS, and it's very good in its own right. Added a lot of great stuff, but my favorite part about this game, my favorite part about this story and this world and the people in it, is that it gets me to fall in love with them, and I was so, because they build up some of this during the story, I started thinking, crap, it's gonna be one of those. I'm gonna have to go out to this other dungeon in the middle of nowhere, and have to do all of this extra stuff just to get what I want. Nah, my friend, you dropped 80 hours plus into this, we're gonna reward you for it. There is no bad ending in this game. There is a great ending and an even better ending, and I respect it so much for that. They know the time I dropped into this story. They know the amount of effort I put into raising these characters and helping them save the world, and I just love how the producers said, you know what? We got you, buddy. We're gonna give you absolutely everything you want, especially if you go through the trouble of finding everything, of doing all of the extra stuff, and yeah, major props to the Dragon Quest team for that. You know how to hit me right here, guys. Right here. It's just a masterpiece. There's no other word for it. This game kind of set the bar there for a little while. It was the go-to standard. Like, I think even people who didn't traditionally like JRPGs started to fall in love with Dragon Quest VIII just because it was so... there's no other word for it, charming. There's so much to it. It has this feeling, this style, this little edge that's been honed to perfection over 8 games. It's the kind of level of style that you can only find by making so many iterations and trying again and again. And it shows. This is an experience made by people who know what makes a JRPG really freaking good. And I tell you what, even though I don't have footage of it, it still holds up to this very day.
Shoot! I forgot to mention Jessica, another one of my favorite redheads from video games. I'm so sorry, my love. You're strong and adventurous and good with a whip, and God, you made my teenage years so much easier.